You know, it's been a couple years since the Leica Q3 came out, and in classic Leica tradition, we now have a monochromatic option, which means every shot I take is going to be in black and white. And I mean, I love this. I know a lot of people think it's quite limiting overall, but you got to think how many photographers out there love to shoot just black and white, myself included, and can find the fact that you have a camera that exclusively shoots that actually very liberating and really uplifting. And it's not just a creative limitation. There are actually some serious benefits involved as well. So yeah, there are a lot of photographers that just want to shoot black and white, or mostly black and white, and I would include myself in that category. I mean, I'd happily shoot the rest of these episodes as you see it right now, monochromatically. I think that'd be great, but I guess the point I'm getting at is, look, the Leica Q3 is not going anywhere. You just now have a monochromatic option that shoots everything black and white. And so in today's video, I'm going to be talking about what has changed here, what will be different. There are some things that are not exactly the same as the Q3 beyond the sensor itself. So I'll point that out to you, but let's begin our black and white adventure. I'm Chris Niccolls, and this is PetaPixel. So after watching this video, you're going to want to take your Leica Q3 that shoots color, and you're going to want to sell that right away, because you're definitely going to go black and white and never look back. So what do? How do you get that money? Do you go on the street into an alley and try to find somebody who might just happen to give you some cash for it, or possibly just take it from you? No, you're gonna wanna go to KEH.com. You know, give them a description of your camera. They're gonna give you an online quote right away. You know you're gonna get a fair price. So KEH.com saves you a ton of time and stress. And then if you decide that you wanna take that money and maybe get something that's new to you from KEH.com, they'll even give you a 10% trade up bonus, which is really nice. And then you can search for all the used gear that you might want to turn that Q3 into. Lots of stuff available on there, and you know that you're going to get it from a trusted source. So KEH.com, that is our recommendation for turning that color Leica Q3 into something you enjoy way more. That is why KEH.com is PetaPixel's official pre-owned camera gear partner. So for handling aspect, in most ways that matter, we have a camera that's identical to the Leica Q3 as far as handling goes. Same weight, same dimensions, of course, all that kind of stuff. But there are still some cosmetic changes that I want to mention. So first off, you'll notice there's no Leica red dot. I mean, that's completely gone there. We've got monochrome on the top as usual, engraved into the top plate. And the camera overall gets rid of any sort of color. So even the silk screening goes to a really sexy gray and white pattern. You'll see that on the dials, you'll see that on the lens itself quite a bit. But there is one change I don't know if I am quite happy about, and that's that they've gone back to a more classic leatherette that looks like leather. You see, the Leica Qs have often had this diamond crosshatch pattern, which I actually find to be really pretty, but I also like that it separates visually distinctly the Leica Q from the Leica M series, and this feels like a bit of a crossover. I don't know if I'm quite happy with that. So of course, in a lot of ways, because we're just going to a monochrome, it makes sense that the handling, the characteristics will be exactly the same as before, but on the other hand, I do still feel like the Leica Q cameras could benefit from some real changes to the ergonomics. I mean, I like the swell that we have, the scallop cut out here for the thumb. That feels good. The dial controls are nice customizability. I like that. But the front grip is still uncomfortable to hold for long periods of time. You really gotta pinch your fingers together, and no camera has ever benefited more from having a supplementary grip. I consider that almost a given that you should buy that. As well, we're not seeing any innovation as far as displays go. 5.76 million dot EVF, that's fine. I like the resolution. The back panel, 1.84 million dots, still just tilting. It's not giving us any further articulation than that. I like that it's still the same, but it is still a little hard to pull out of here sometimes, hard to kind of get a grip on it. And we're just not seeing any differences from the Leica Q3. So sadly, we're still not seeing any internal memory with this iteration of the Leica Q3. You know, this is something we see a lot in the M cameras, and I really love having it, but here we're still stuck with using SD cards. There's a single UHS 2 card slot right here, and as well, we've got the same BP SCL6 battery. This is the same as Leica Q3, lasts a nice long time, and it's just incorporated into the body in a very clever way, and this still maintains that IP52 weather sealing throughout the whole structure. We do have one major difference from the Leica Q3 now to the Q3 Monochrom, and that's the adoption of a new menu system that was debuted with the Leica SL3 mirrorless cameras. Now, I have to say, I actually found the original Q3 menu to be more charming. I mean, you've got your sub-menus on top, and then you push down to go into your other functions, but then you have to push right to actually adjust features in those functions. It's a little bit more cumbersome. This new menu system is maybe less charming, but it's more practical. Here I can simply scroll up and down through my menus and then push right when I want to change those features, and it does seem to make a bit more sense. It's a little bit quicker to operate. And there's also another new feature you're going to find in that menu that you wouldn't have found before, and that is the fact that this now has C2PA content authenticity. In fact, this is the first Leica Q camera to feature that. Even the Q3 43 didn't have it. And of course, we like that. We like having that trustworthiness associated to your files just to show what's been edited and what hasn't been edited, and have the information for other people to verify. So that is now built into this camera. Okay, so Jordan, let's just try something fun here. Switch to color for just a second. There you go, look at that. Still pretty much black and white for the most part, so we're staying true to the spirit of this episode. I'm gonna take this short moment to talk about the shutter on this. We've got the same maximum 1/2000 of a second leaf shutter in this Leica Q3 Monochrom, which means I can't cut that much light if I wanna shoot wide open on the street on a bright sunny day, but it does also mean that the shutter's incredibly quiet. There's like no shake, it's very stable. Couple that with the image stabilization in the lens, and I can really handhold this camera at slower shutter speeds. I can go to electronic shutter if I want to, but we have to remember this 60 megapixel sensor has kind of brutal rolling shutters, so I really don't want to do that in pretty much any situation that's got movement. I still love the lens. We got that same 28mm f1.7 from the Leica Q3, sharp, even wide open, like really nice on this 60 megapixel sensor, great focal length for wandering around shooting on the street. But it does also make me think that perhaps we're going to see a Q3 43mm version in monochrome coming out soon. I mean, I haven't heard anything, but that would make sense. So just like we've seen before, we have the same macro capability. You can click this just on the ring into a macro mode. I like that it does change your actual distance markers here, and it lets us get pretty close. I mean, I would say just under 7 inches from the sensor to the subject, which on a 28mm focal length means you're not getting like macro, but you can get fairly close to your subjects and you can do some neat detail shots.
Is it a good bird in flight camera?
No, I would not call this a good bird flight camera, Jordan. It's not really well suited for that. But I mean, hey, 28mm lens, I can crop it with the digital crop to 35, 50, 75, or 90 still. So still not a good bird and flight camera at all. But you know, at 4 frames per second with autofocus, maximum burst rate, still not a great bird camera. So no, I guess the answer is no, it's not a great bird camera. So the obvious difference between the Leica Q3 Monochrom and the Q3 that came before it is the fact that we have a monochromatic sensor. Before I talk about the image quality ramifications of that new sensor, I do want to talk about autofocus, because one of the things that has changed is we lose the phase detect array in the pixels, which means we no longer have hybrid phase and contrast detect autofocus. This brings us back to just a contrast detect only autofocusing system, and honestly it reminds me of Panasonic autofocusing pre-S5 II when they introduced phase detect. The first thing I'm going to notice is if I'm using continuous autofocusing. And I just want to preface this with saying Leica Q cameras are never great with tracking autofocus continuous. You often would lose your subject and stuff like that. But what you can see here now is we're getting the wibbly wobblies, and that's where the background is constantly shifting, and it's distracting. It's not very confidence inspiring, even if the autofocus is still, in a lot of cases, accurately focusing. But there is a situation where continuous autofocus is actually quite effective, and that's when using the subject detection for face and eyes on people. I mean, I am finding it, despite the wibbly wobblies in the background, tracking quite well in that situation. So you can see here, focusing on Jordan's eyes, focusing on his face, it's following him really nicely, even as I move the camera around. And it's quite quick too, so if somebody were to walk in a frame and I want to get a quick grab shot, I've got good confidence that it's going to go right to the face and eye. But in most situations, I'm still using the Q3 Monochrom the same way I would use any other Leica Q camera, even before the Q3, and that is most of the time in single autofocus with a single point in the center. Just lock on my subject, recompose. The 28mm lens's depth of field handles any sort of minor discrepancy in distance I might have, and I'm finding that very quick and effective. I think that's how most users would use it. So yes, there are some challenges to living in a monochromatic world, as been discussed. I mean, the autofocus has changed a little bit on this camera. If I choose to wear all black, apparently I'm just a floating head and hands blending into this background here. And if I wanted to shoot color, I don't, but if I wanted to, I wouldn't be able to. But there are some very interesting benefits as well. We've seen this before with a lot of other monochromatic sensors. So we're losing a lot of the RGB filters, for example, in front of the sensor, and actually we do get a slight, very slight improvement in sharpness, 60 megapixels plus just a touch more sharpness involved here. I consider that negligible, but regardless, we get tons of detail with this camera. What's not negligible though is the improvement in just overall image quality when it comes to noise levels and detail in the shadows, and even a little bit of dynamic range. So when it comes to like the actual amount of noise that we're getting, we're seeing a stop, I'd even say over a stop of improvement here over the color array Leica Q3 sensor. If you look at both cameras, I've shot an example here of both at 3200 ISO, you can see that it's quite a bit cleaner in the Q3 Monochrom. And if I shoot that Q3 Monochrom at 6400 ISO and compare it to 3200 ISO on the Q3 color, I still think we have a slight improvement here. I think the image quality is still even a little bit better, and so that's really nice. And so I just think that's a really nice improvement. I mean, if you're willing to sacrifice color, just shoot black and white, there are serious advantages to shooting these monochromatic sensors. And I do love the fact that I can wander in pretty much any light, shoot higher ISOs without really worrying about that. The fact that I'm shooting black and white, I don't mind a bit of noise. I mean, it looks very organic, like grain structure on Leica cameras, but also that I can push it to further extremes and still get nice detail. Makes this a black and white photographer's dream. I just want to give you guys a quick little interesting fact with monochromatic sensors, and that is that you can enjoy the long lost art of using the colored filter. This is orange, just take my word for it, and I know that you can go into post and you can do a lot of editing with contrast after the fact. So not everybody's going to find this interesting, but the cool thing about color filters is they're easy to throw on, and what they'll do is basically make any colors that are complementary to this go brighter, and anything which is contrasting to this go darker. So in the case of an orange filter, if I'm shooting things like this scene with a blue sky and some blue features around, those will actually go darker in the shot, give me more separation against the clouds and stuff like that. It could be a really fun way to darken foliage, whatever. So there's lots of different colors, and if you want to experiment, a monochromatic sensor lets you do that. So when it comes to video on the Q3 Monochrom, this would be pretty similar to what we've seen on the Q3 color. You can shoot resolution-wise up to cinema 8K, 30 frames per second, but with a heavy crop. If you choose to shoot 4K 60, you're gonna have subsampling, so there's a little bit of loss of image quality there. This sensor is just not great for video. And there's some other issues too. The fact that the Monochrom does not have hybrid phase and contrast detect autofocus means that if you shoot video with continuous AF, you're gonna get that pulsing, and it's gonna look absolutely terrible in video. So you're largely gonna stick to single point autofocus or manual focusing only. And we still don't get any sort of audio input, no headphone jack, so we're actually recording on two cameras. We have to sync those up afterwards, which is a pain in the butt. So again, it brings us back to this. We have log recording, which is nice. It shoots beautiful black and white, so you can get that extra dynamic range in video. If you want to do the occasional beautiful clip visually, fantastic, but as a video camera, it's still weak. The Leica M series is not going to give us any video capability. The Leica Q series for video is just not strong. Really, if we wanted to see some sort of future Leica camera that had a monochromatic sensor but good video capability with the proper audio inputs and interface, it would be up to the SL3 lineup. So hopefully we'll see some sort of SL3 monochrome shortly in the future. More than any other manufacturer, Leica has experimented with monochromatic sensors for many years now across many different camera series, and I've been fortunate enough to review pretty much all of them, and I've enjoyed the experience every single time. I love black and white photography, and there's something about having a camera that forces you into that mindset. So I'm pre-visualizing everything in black and white, and I know for that session at least that's how I'm going to be shooting, and I love that experience. And you can look at it pessimistically and say, yeah, it's not very versatile, losing color photography altogether. But if you love shooting black and white photography, or if you're an exclusive monochromatic photographer, you get substantial image quality benefits that can absolutely be appreciated. I get that Leica cameras are very expensive, and I don't think it's in the realm of possibility for a lot of photographers to have both monochromatic and color versions of the same cameras, and so I get that. But if you love black and white photography, this makes a ton of sense. I mean, I myself would love to have a Q3 monochrome and an M11 in monochrome. I just think it makes a lot of sense for this platform. And the thing that I thought was really going to be a downside, the fact that we're losing hybrid phase contrast detect autofocus, turned out to really not be that negative an experience. I'm still primarily shooting, especially the Q3, in a lock, and recompose shoot kind of format, in which case phase detect wasn't really a big advantage anyways, and I'm still finding the eye detect to be very reliable here. Whether this camera is going to work for you or not is really going to be up to personal preference. If you're there looking at the screen saying, these are a dumb idea, I'm losing versatility, I totally get that. But I know that there's some of you out there that are saying, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I love the Q3, I love black and white photography. This is going to be perfect for you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. I know I enjoyed using the camera. Leave your comments below. We always appreciate that. We're going to probably be talking about this camera on the PetaPixel podcast. It'll be on this exact same channel, or you can listen to it on all your favorite podcasting apps, and there's be some interesting discussion involved in whether black and white photography is enough to justify limiting the cameras in such a way. Also, do consider getting a PetaPixel.com membership. That really helps us out. You actually have a full sample gallery on there from the Q3 Monochrom, so you can look at those and download those and check those out if you are a member, as well as great discounts across our merch store and other platforms like Cage.com and the Moment Store. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon with more on PetaPixel.